Hello, Healed community. Welcome back to another episode of a case study into pedophile or pioneer. Today we're talking about Errol Musk. Okay. Ruth is going to facilitate telling us the story as we dive into the details of a relationship that unfolded over a period of time between him and his stepdaughter and what has come to light as a result of it. So, this is episode 4, and we are happy to have you back with us once again. Welcome in. This is a safe space. Talk. Hi, Ruth. How are you doing this evening?
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Ida. It's a lovely chilly morning here in New Zealand, but doing so well. And thank you for that introduction. As Edith mentioned, yes, in this episode today, we want to take a careful and a really honest look at the story of Errol Musk as told by a family friend on the Wide Awake podcast. So just for our viewers, um, this information is based on the episode on the Wide Awake podcast. So if you want to check it out, you can have a look on YouTube. And the events are based on this episode, and we're using these events as a case study to look into a possible example of grooming and boundary violation. So as we unpack this, I just want to preface by saying this is not judgment, but it's insight. This is for educational purposes only, because we understand the dynamics, Elif and myself both, and we begin to free ourselves and others from the shame and silence trauma often imposes when we speak about these topics. All right, so let's start with it. We're going to start with a timeline of events as told by the friend of the Musk family. So this friend tells us that Errol Musk had a peculiar relationship with his stepdaughter, Jana Bezuidenhout. And Errol and Jana had their first child when Errol was 70 and Jana was 30 years old. Now, according to this family friend, this relationship dynamic started a long time ago, and that's what we're going to unpack here today. So let's take a look at the history that led to these events. And we welcome you to add your thoughts to the comments, anything you want to add or information that you might even have about this, please put it in the comments, guys. So let's begin. So Errol Musk married his first wife, and they had 3 children. So that's Elon, Kimball, and Tosca. And Errol and May divorced in 1979. Then in the early 1990s, Errol, a now 45-year-old, met 25-year-old Jana Bezuidenhout, whom he describes as one of the best-looking women he has ever seen. So Hyde already had 3 children, Jacques, Herman, and Jana, from a previous marriage when she met Errol. So later, Errol and Hyde welcomed another 2 daughters, Alexandra and Asher Rose. So in total, Errol had 7 biological children and 3 stepchildren. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little family tree for you so that you can see how everybody is connected and you can put faces to the names that you'll be hearing about. Now, according to this close friend of the family, she says that this information that is going to be spoken about here today has been known for a long time by the Musk family, by social workers, by lawyers, and friends of the family. So we can see that this story has impacted many, many lives. Now we're going to be focusing on Jana Bezuidenhout and her story, now that we've had some history. Right, so Jana is the daughter of Hyde Bezuidenhout and the stepdaughter, like we said, of Errol Musk. But we're telling this part of Jana's story because when Errol entered Jana's life, everything changed. All right. So in 1990, just to go back to Jana's mom, Hyde Bezuidenhout, which is Jana's mom, she married Jacques Bezuidenhout. They had 3 children together, like I mentioned. Jacques is the oldest, Herman and Jana, and they lived in Pretoria. Then Jacques tragically passed away in a motor accident. And then the
Mm.
25-year-old Jana Bezuidenhout was left with 3 children. And according to this family friend, she was quite overwhelmed. She was so young and she had 3 children. But nevertheless, she was well taken care of financially. And just for some perspective, so Jacques, the oldest boy, was 6 when his father passed. Jana was 2 years old, and Herman was 2 months old. So we can see the family unit is still brand new. And 3 months later, after this, Haida met 45-year-old Errol Musk. And 2 years later, Haida and Errol got married. So, from the family friend's perspective, everybody was really happy for Haida. She had found an older man who would provide stability according to the family and be a good father to the children. And the new married Haida, she still had some grief, I guess, as the family friend described. She often went to the hospital where she was treated with depression. And during this time, Errol would visit her in the hospital. And Errol apparently told her that if the children was placed in foster care, the two of them could have a pretty good life and focus on her healing. So around that time, when she was in and out of hospital, according to this family friend, Haida began noticing a change in Jana's behavior. The 4-year-old Jana was apparently having tantrums of a teenager, kicking and screaming, and she was behaving out of the ordinary. Now, if I don't know about you, but toddlers are normally very feisty, but this family friend described this behavior as being really out there. So
So
this is
sort of
when,
exaggerated. It is a sign. So yes, tantrums can be normal, especially when you're looking at a 2, 3 year old. And it also depends on how the child, the environment and what just how the child is raised, I suppose, and their personality. But one of
hmm,
the signs for abuse in the home, especially of that nature, is that behaviors are quite exaggerated. They're extreme. They seem the response, the tantrum, or the anger, or the naughty, the behavior seems to be pushed to an extreme. It seems to be ill. It doesn't fit with the circumstance,
yeah, yeah.
and that's one of the signs. So that could be what is being described there. But I just want to ask you before you carry on, Ruth, this family friend, does this family friend specifically say um, how they're a family friend, or
No, no.
um,
So just
'cause
to
when I watched
clarify,
the interview, yeah,
Just to clarify, this person's identity has been protected during the
yeah,
interview.
yeah,
So it is not
okay.
clear, but we are referring to them as a family friend, and they have insight into what is going on.
They must be quite a close friend too, because when I
Mm,
watched the interview, it felt to me like this was a family member, maybe saying I'm a family friend.
yeah.
But that was just me because it was very close. And then Ruth, the foster care,
Mm,
nothing actually happened. It was just said that it was an idea that Errol came up with to say, well, if the kids go in, was it just an idea that came out of the blue? If the kids go into foster care, we could have a really good life. So there
yes.
wasn't actually any
No,
reason or
not
anything
at
that
this
came up.
stage. Not at this stage, but we are going to get into it because further down the
We're going
line,
to get into
obviously, there
that
are
later.
developments around that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
So let's continue. So when Yana was having all these tantrums, this is when she went to her aunt. She traveled from Pretoria to Darling in Cape Town to go visit with her aunt. And this is when the 4-year-old Yana told her aunt that her stepfather had touched her. And the little girl was so distraught, she begged her aunt not to tell her mom. The aunt then immediately flew to Pretoria with Jana to Child Protection Services in Rietfontein, Pretoria, where Jana was questioned and a case was opened. So that was around the 26th of October 1993. Haida was told after the case was opened, and she was very, very shocked. She immediately went and confronted Errol on the same evening. Errol then apparently burst into tears and admitted he done it. So, according to this family friend, at this time, Errol also had a conversation with Haida about trauma that he experienced in his childhood, but the details of that is not known. So, according to the family friend, there was a deal made with the lawyer, as Errol admitted to what he did. And this was very unfortunate for Jana. So, then 2 years later, around 1996, there was apparently another incident that occurred. Jana wanted to throw herself off a roof after telling someone she was touched again. And apparently the story disappeared, nothing came of it. So by now, Haida and Errol were divorced, but Haida continued to check into various mental health or wellness institutions once a year. And Jana, because of this incident, had a breakdown and she stopped speaking during this time. And she was admitted to Westkopie's psychiatric hospital where she spent 6 weeks. So after Haida's treatment, she felt better. And when she returned home, it was decided that her 3 children would go into foster care. So this is when there's action taken on that suggestion. So up to this point, the children had a lot of instability. They spent time with aunts, with their grandparents, and so on. So at this point, the 3 children were then placed into different foster homes. So they were not together as a unit. Herman, Jacques, and Jana were placed into different foster homes. So Jana was on her own. Then in 1999, Haida and Errol remarried. During this time, Haida would visit her children in foster care, and the children would visit her and Errol. So there was a visitation. According to the family friend, the entire family traveled to the USA shortly after. In 2000, the children came out of the children's home. So from 1999 to 2001, they were in foster care. And then 2001 is when they came out of foster care. Then the family traveled to the USA to visit with family. There's some christening, I think, happening within the family. And the family then decided to stay together in the United States after visiting with the family for some time. The family lived in a house in Malibu, and Jana, she attended high school there. Towards the end of 2002, another incident of a sexual nature between her and Errol happened. So due to the incident, a protection order, according to this family friend, was granted against Errol. He was not allowed near the house. The protection order was granted by the Los Angeles Police Protection Services. So the family decided they're going to return to South Africa. And then Errol also returned. And when the family got back, according to this family friend, they all lived together for a short time. Jana's mom then decided she wanted to divorce Errol. And Jana went to go live with her auntie, the one that she visited when she was 4. She went to go live with her auntie in Darling. Her mom then also bought a house in Darling. And when Jana's mom arrived there in Darling, according to this family friend, Errol came along too. And he eventually bought his own house in Darling. So during this time, Jana got into drinking, There was an incident where unfortunately her brother was in an accident, and she was really sad about this, according to the family friend. And Jana got into drinking and drugs, and she then moved in with her grandfather in Pretoria. So she moved back to Pretoria from Darling. She then completed her matric and also attended rehab. So shortly after, she moved to Cape Town, back to Cape Town from Pretoria after matric, where she attended Boland College, and that's in Stellenbosch. So on the weekends, Jana would travel to Darling. So she was between Stellenbosch and Darling attending college. Then the next incident. So when Jana was at Boland College, Errol arrived one day telling her that she was beautiful, that he wanted her. And according to this family friend, Jana's response was she was so repulsed by this. She told Errol to stay away from her and her friends. And then Jana went to the police station and asked for a restraining order against Errol. So according to the family member, Jana was blamed for the incident. And because of this, she relapsed and she started using again. This time, Jana ended up on the street and she got pregnant from another man. So in 2013, 2014, Jana was in dire straits and she reached out to Errol for help. Now, I just want to give a bit of a recap so that we can see where she's at this point in her life. So just to recap, from the age of 4, Jana, she was shortly after her mother remarried, she was put into foster care. She obviously had been assaulted. She then traveled to another country with her family. As she got older, she had to come to terms with everything that happened, often without the support of her mom. And she tried to cope by using drugs. Then she went to rehab. Then she went to college. Then while in Stellenbosch, another incident occurred, and she was blamed for that behavior. She relapsed. She ended up on the street and pregnant with another man's child. So I'm just recapping here so that we can see the emotional state that Jana could have been in when she reached out to her stepdad, Errol, for help. The family friend also mentioned that around this time, Jana wanted very little to do with her mom because she was in a relationship. Ida was in a relationship with another man. So Jana reached out to her dad, Errol, even though, according to this family friend, he wasn't a good one. And Jana still saw him as dad and even called him dad. So Errol provided financial support and he bought her a car, according to this family friend. And he also paid for medication for Jana to get off drugs. So there's a certain type of medication that she was on. It was quite expensive, according to this family friend. Yeah. And this was between 2014 2015. So eventually, Errol invited Jana to come and stay with him. Then in 2016, the news broke that Errol had a child with his stepdaughter. And from an insert that was shown, it seemed that he was very proud of this, citing that he was proud of all of his children. According to him, he and Jana, during the time that she stayed with him, developed a connection, and out of this connection, a child was born. So the family friend said that Jana's mom was very, very shocked by this. And she stated, Haida had stated that Errol brought shame to the family. The family friend said that the family is upset and they feel that this is unacceptable. These are their thoughts. Errol, his youngest daughter, Rose, shortly after this news broke, moved out of the father's home. And the family friend said that Errol's youngest daughter, Rose, felt unsafe, so she moved out. We know from the podcast that Jana and Errol had 2 children together. So I just wanted to end off the series with events with the last piece of information. In 2022, there was an incident that occurred um, where, according to this family friend, Jana confronted Errol in a public place. And she was calling him out and accused him publicly of being a pedophile. So, just a keynote, there is evidence of the SAP police reports available on the podcast, so you can have a look there. But that is the story of Jana Bezuidenhout. Very, very sad story. I think there is so much in there. So that's the story of Jana. Your thoughts, Ella?
So the police report that you say can be found on the is it on the podcast on the
Yeah. So there
where
are snippets of the actual case files on there.
okay.
Just
and
yeah.
this is the report of
Of-
what report was that specifically? What
So
report is
so
that specifically pertaining
so
to?
that
To
is
the
the
when
protection
4 years
order.
old,
So that is
a
the
protection
protection
order.
order.
Mm.
There is a clip, I think, of the first one when she was 4 years old, when her aunt flew up with her. There was like a little clip of that. And then the one where she was in Stellenbosch, where she had the protection order. There's also a short snippet or just a
Ah,
screenshot of that.
okay. So, for the purpose of this conversation, we know that there was protection sought, but
Mm,
there was no actual conviction or any case that had proven that there was any molestation, sexual abuse, etc. So, for the purpose of our discussion, this is all alleged. So,
yeah,
allegedly, this is. Let's start at the beginning because there is a lot that I want to talk about
yeah.
here.
Let's start at the beginning. We
She's
can see that
five,
Haida she was a young widow with multiple children. I think that's the
yeah,
starting point when
she's
she met Errol.
25 years old. She's 25 years old, Heide. 25 years old, and she's widowed. So uh, the family's quite happy when she meets Errol. He's a 45-year-old man, so he's 20 years her senior. He's 20 years her senior, she's 25. And I think where we are nowadays with how much we've learned and how much access we have to information, that should already, for me, have sparked, that should have triggered a red flag. But, I think there's something to be said where, and we all have family members like that, where people think that the ideal is to have someone take care of like a woman needs to be taken care of. And that's
Right.
very much been the mindset and the culture. If you don't have someone taking care of you and your children, then
Mm,
you're not okay. And I think that can play quite heavily on a woman's psychology, but it also plays into our self-worth and our self-esteem. So 25-year-old is quite young. You don't really know who you are.
mm,
Um, Widowed, left with children. According to the interview, he said that it's not, some might think that, so just thinking about the situation that Heidi is in. So she's married, she's got these small kids, and suddenly she's a single mom. She's a single mother at the age of 25. One would naturally imagine, as I'm sure we all can, just the mental state that she would then have found herself in. She obviously
mm,
married
mm,
quite young. I think
mm,
that was very customary. I married young, and it was normal. It was customary. It was even considered good because then you grow with your partner. Now, when I look back, it's terrible because you don't even know who you are.
mm, mm,
So now being 25, suddenly your entire world is shattered because the future that you thought you had with this other person, the support is gone, and she's left with these two little kids. I thought to myself, a lot of people might wonder if the reason why she went for Errol was because now she was a single mom, and most women in that situation would end up in financial dire straits.
Mm, mm,
Uh, because I mean that's just most people's situation, is that they would end up now being without that second income, all alone with these two kids, maybe not even having a career that pays that much. But when I watched the interview, um, the family friend said it wasn't about money. She did have an inheritance. Her husband, her late husband, had made provisions in
yeah,
the event of anything happening. So it wasn't about money. She did have money. Um, and so I think that we need to be aware of the grooming,
mm,
the how skilled, especially when there's a, a power dynamic, quite a big gap between the how a person that is older, the position that they're in, this maybe knowing who they are better, experience, and then you have this young 25-year-old vulnerable with these little kids
yeah.
who's 20 years younger. Do you think, Ruth, it would be fair to say that even though Jana was not underage, that because of the vulnerable position she was in, she was groomed as well? Because I would imagine that if someone says to me from where I stand now, and certainly I know when you're younger, even when you're a young adult and you think you know it all, I made some compromising decisions thinking that I know it all from a very immature place, emotionally and psychologically, when I was younger. I think it's important to discuss and to just recognize that a predator, they like to be in that position of power. It's often why they like to go for younger people who are less knowledgeable, who they sort of have an upper hand or an advantage. They can see this person's vulnerable, they can act like a savior. A very similar thing happened to me with my you know, with my ex-husband, who I spoke about and shared a little bit about, because I was married to a pedophile. And I was also around 25. I was also around the
Mm,
same age.
mm,
So I really think that there is a grooming, and I think that's their personality very often for these types of people who are in these positions. They want to go for people who are going to look up to them, who are going to trust everything they say. They're sort of in a position of power. The dynamic is different. They know the individual is vulnerable. Um,
yeah, yeah.
because
Look, I
for
definitely
someone,
think, you know,
yeah.
Jana was a child when he entered her life, right? She didn't choose the bond. It was shaped by obviously her mother's choice to marry him. So kind of circumstance. Um, but it definitely has, like you said, those aspects of grooming. Um, when you look at Heidi's emotional state when she was in, I can just imagine having three children at 25. Um, you know, that must have been really overwhelming for her. And like the family friend mentioned, when she met Errol, they welcomed that because he was a bit older. He obviously had children of his own. So they thought he was going to be a really good father figure.
Yeah.
Um, but I do
But
think
I
that
think that,
if we look at Heidi's emotional and psychological struggles because of what happened to her at that young age, you know, the death of her husband, etc., it could have maybe prevented her um, from looking at this, like you said, fully seeing what was happening or,
yeah,
you know, stop
I
what
don't think
was.
she had the capacity. I don't think she had the capacity. And it's
Mm,
very, I think that we as a community, I think that we should recognize this as a red flag because society centered men so much as the rescuer. If you're a woman alone with children, then you're going to be vulnerable and lonely, and you're not complete if you don't have that man in the home protecting and
mm,
taking care
mm,
of. And it's
mm,
such a warped narrative. It's so patriarchal, and it's something that, yes, um, is romanticized to the
mm,
point where we can overlook very important factors. For example, I'd like to think that we can begin to grow and recognize and see that as a red flag, very possibly for a personal experience, that we need to start doing things differently. When a mother suddenly becomes a single mom, whether it's because of divorce or because of death, that the family step forward and support her and encourage her to get the mental health. There was, you know what I mean? It's so common, healing, mental health, therapy, growing, recovery is not it's not normalized. And that is why you're at Heal. That is certainly what we want to start promoting, is to normalize recovery. And so that
mm,
was the first red flag there is not you need time, you and your children need to grieve.
mm,
um, you're good enough, and we as a family are going to support you in the best way possible. Look, it's always possible that she was going to go off and do her own thing anyway, because most
yeah.
25-year-olds would have. But most families do encourage that sort of thing, like, because a woman on her own, without a man, is seen as shortage. It's seen as something's lacking. And so many women, instead of healing or recovering or taking a breath and figuring out what they're doing, they feel incomplete if they don't have that man, that if that men are so centered. And I think it is a big red flag. It is at the center of so much tragedy because men are so centered. And it's not just the individual that thinks that way because she's young and she's lonely. The individual that very possibly thinks that way, because obviously I can't speak for her. I can only look at the story, think of every young woman that might have found themselves in that position, and assume that there is a deep sense of loneliness, and suddenly feeling like this person who was supposed to be the center of our world, our protector, our security is gone, and so now it'll be nice to replace that. But it's a very vulnerable place to be, and that mindset where we center men all the time often is why predators target single moms and
Mm,
come in, and they play the white knight, Prince Charming, and the whole family just laps it up because society's mindset has also been for the longest time, if you're wealthy,
mm,
you can't be a predator or a serial killer. You must be
mm,
perfect. Because how do you get rich if you're not perfect? Only perfect people obtain wealth. So we've got to mature, we've got to grow mentally and start to look at things, um, not being so gullible. That to me was the first red flag.
absolutely. I
And
think,
if we look, yeah,
no, no, I absolutely agree. Um,
mm,
I think to change the narrative, like you said, women need to empower themselves. And I know it can be a real challenge, especially after losing someone. Then to gather
mm,
yourself again, especially when you've got three children, it's so
yeah,
important. And recognizing those
ex-
red flags is equally important. But I just wanted to touch
yeah,
on something that you said in a previous podcast is that you have zero tolerance for abuse. And I just thought of So this
Yeah.
the second thing I just wanted to touch on was you said something in a previous podcast about zero tolerance for abuse. I think society needs to get back, needs to sever that cord, sever the ties, no matter who they are in your life. It's so important that when we recognize abuse, we also take a breather. Like you said, there needs to be healing done. And what we
Yes.
experienced here in this story and so many other stories is that when, and it certainly happened in my case, when a perpetrator offends, they get to stay. That is another red flag. As a mother, um,
That's not even a red flag. That is just a
a
gruesome,
betrayal.
uh, fa-
Um,
a gruesome failure of responsibility and accountability. Ruth, I think that, like I said early on, what you and I are very passionate about is starting to spread awareness around the value of building a culture that normalizes recovery, because when you do that, you raise your children to understand, to center recovery as opposed to, and how that looks is not focusing on what's the right thing to do, but what's the healthy thing to do. Because whether we want
absolutely.
to acknowledge it or not, there is a difference. What is the, and sometimes we're so driven to do the right thing that it's not the healthy thing. So what's the
Mm,
right thing to do here? What's the best thing to do here? What's the right thing to do for my kids? Or what? And then we look at our family and we look at our community and, oh, they love this person, and oh, he's so wonderful because he's driving a fancy car, and oh, he's so this, and oh, he's so that, and now I'm not going to be a single mother, which is so shameful and which is
mm,
lonely, and who's
mm,
gonna want me? And he wants me, and he's willing to take care of me or to give me what I now thought was lost. So what's the right thing to do? Do I give this up? No, this would be silly. This is good for my children because they then get to have what I now think has been lost. So that's the right, that might seem like the right thing to do in the moment, depending on our community, our culture, and what we've been taught, and the influence from others, and our wound and our insecurity and our trauma. But is it the healthy thing to do? And so that's the difference. So when you have a culture of recovery, that's the kind of conversations you have with your kids. And I do it with my kids too. Oh, so I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Is that the healthy thing to do? Is that going to be good for your mental health? Is that going to be good for your emotional and your physical health? Which is a very different way of thinking. And it's not really a conversation that is promoted amongst family.
but I
So
do
I think
believe
that,
there's so much value in what you say there, because if you look at it, once you take off, if there has been abuse that occurred, once you take off the rose tinted glasses and you know, take away that provider, that smile, whatever it is, like you were
mm,
explaining now, um, you stop convincing yourself that, this is love, because that was a big thing in my case. Um, because real love, it doesn't confuse, it doesn't control, it doesn't harm. That is the most
yeah,
important thing. And when you finally see the truth and take time, like you said, then it could shatter your world. It could. I'm sure it
yes,
must have been so devastating for Haida, but it will also set you
yeah,
free. And that is what we're getting
yes,
at. We're getting back to that healing. Um, because you absolutely, as we can see in this case and so many other cases there, you deserve to choose yourself and your family and your health and your well-being over someone who has never really chosen you for the right reasons. Um,
yeah. Ruth, at that stage, obviously, there wasn't anything wrong. There were no red flags standing out. There wasn't
mm,
anything that would be recognized as a con. Okay, he's an older man. He's mature. He's established. He's probably settled, he's probably grown. You would automatically expect, and this is the mistake that we make very often, that because somebody is older in age, that they are mature and that they've grown and that they're conscious and that they're an
mm,
adult. We have
mm,
many unhealed, broken, unevolved individuals walking around in adult bodies. But in her and any other woman's defense that might resemble the story we're telling, at that stage, nothing was standing out. For the family to be concerned about or her, nothing looked wrong. And that is why I'm saying if you want to foster a culture of recovery, the question won't be what's the right thing to do? What's the
mm,
healthy thing to
mm,
do? The healthy thing would not be asking, is anything wrong or right here? Because everything would look right at that moment. The healthy thing would be, even if this was the perfect person, is it healthy for me to get into a relationship, build a life? Or is the healthy thing for me to show up for myself, go to therapy, allow myself a much, if he loves me, he will support me in any way that's going
absolutely.
to support my health, my mental health. So he won't need to infringe or be a part of my everyday life or take the place of. The healthy thing for me would be to give my children, to not have my attention divided between.
Mm,
Do you understand? That is why I'm saying no matter what your situation is, if you want to foster a culture of recovery and you want to teach your children that, because our children learn by what we do, not what we say, ask yourself not what is the right thing to do, but what is the healthy thing to do here? Because
mm,
often figuring out what the right thing to do can be very difficult and it can be challenging. And this, to me, is an example of that.
yeah.
Now, the next red flag, Ruth, that I want to talk to you about is the kids are little, as you say. And he says, if you put your kids into foster care, we could have a really good life. So, to my knowledge, there's no issue with money. He's got a lot of money. He's wealthy. She's got a great inheritance. She's got enough money. So, it's not about money. It's not that they can't afford to take care of the kids, but he sees having her to himself as them having a better life.
Mm,
Uh, just them. So, that to me is a very big, that to me was a big red flag right there.
absolutely.
Just making that statement.
Absolutely. Yeah. I I definitely think, abusers, they often try to weaken bonds. And this is just with other case studies, especially between that dynamic of mother and children, to gain more control. And knowing that the woman is without a support system, she's already feeling vulnerable, or, for me, that is just an indicator. Oh, this is an opportunity to manipulate. Um, and I'm thinking about other cases now as well. So that
Yeah.
kind of suggestion, from a perpetrator it reveals disturbing intent, because there's almost like a
Yeah.
plan behind that, to remove certain, you could almost say obstacles. I'm not saying that's what the children were, but um, it is a destabilization of the family unit in essence. If you would think about this, if a mother is in recovery and she is still dealing with grief, you would think the most consoling thing would be for her children to be around her. Yeah, so this looked like a destabilization of the family unit. Like I was saying, you would think that a mother that was grieving, her greatest consolation for me, that would be to have my children around me. They're a reminder of my past, but there we can see that this action that was taken, for me, it seemed deliberate. And again, all of this is alleged, it's just my viewpoint. But
Yes, yes.
and when you look at the children, according to this family friend, they were placed in different homes. And that is so, it's cruel. They're not even together as a family unit. So each child was placed in a different home. And for 2 years, there was this back and forth. Um, and that again, I can only get back to that destabilization of the family unit. Obviously weakens
Yeah.
the family bond between mother and children, and abusers, they often try to weaken the bonds between the mother and children to
I think
obviously
what you're
gain.
saying there, yeah, yeah. What you're saying really just stands out, Ruth. An abuser's intent, a narcissist's intent is to weaken family bonds and to isolate the individuals. Because one would wonder why, if perhaps his intention was to get to the kids because she's a vulnerable mom and they're young kids, why would he want them out of the house?
Mm,
But if he groomed her and she was his focus at that time, to weaken bonds with other family members would also then set the tone. And this is what grooming is. There is a long term plan with grooming. I want to basically be the center of each and every one of their worlds. If their bonds are weakened, then I can be their individual heroes, which means I can manipulate them individually.
yes.
But if their bond
Mm,
is strong, then I'm the one that stands separate. And
mm,
so this is what people need to understand. The process of grooming is a lengthy one. There is this
mm,
long term process that takes place. Um, and yeah, what a thing to say to someone, especially coming in. Um, when yes, the kids and the mother has just gone through a great trauma. I think the fact that they were put into foster care and they were separated is also such an indication of how broken the system is, because
mm,
you in essence doing exactly, you are destabilizing the family, you are destroying bonds that are uh, in some cases the only bonds they have.
mm. Absolutely.
That
I
is
just,
so destructive.
it is really disturbing when you think about it. I had a similar scenario play out in my family when I was a teenager. And my aunt remarried a guy. He then sent her two children off to foster care, citing that it will be better. Now, again, they weren't in any sort of financial turmoil or anything like that. And the family thought that it was really extreme. I think it was called Child Welfare Services or something like that in Cape Town, if I remember correctly. Because we didn't want to
It's
see our
still,
cousins go. No way. And after that, thinking back now, I can see that is classic manipulation. This guy created the problem, my aunt's new husband. And what he did afterwards, he also created the solution, saying, it's okay. Let's rather take them out. When the family really started getting, and that is the traits of a manipulator, a narcissist. Um,
yes.
they deepen the victim's emotional and practical dependence. So automatically, like you were saying, they are in the beginning they create the problem, but then they go from villain to the hero. And
Yes.
again, that
Yes.
must be so confusing for the children, because I remember my cousins were like, "Oh, thank you, Uncle so and so, for." No, but he's not the hero in the story.
Yeah, yeah. It's not even confusing, it's devastating because their entire world is shattered and their safe person is no longer their safe person. So now a predator can come in and be the hero and have more of a hold on them and have more of an ability to manipulate them, because the narcissist doesn't know
Absolutely.
how to have a healthy relationship. They know how to have a transactional relationship where
Yes.
they need to be in the position of power or the victim, and a victim, and in power by association as a victim, you see. So that stands out to me there.
And even just by suggesting that someone, like with my aunt's case, even by suggesting that the children had to go into foster care, child welfare, whatever it was, that was actually an attack on her self worth as well as a mother. Because in essence, what you're saying is that you are incapable of taking care of your own children for whatever that reason might be. So the manipulator positions himself as the one that knows best. Oh, this is, and that's such a red flag, like you said. Abusers often start by weakening the person's confidence in their own instincts and even parenting, which is so disturbing.
Yes. And I think something else to be aware of is that they choose women who are in that kind of emotional and psychological state,
Yes,
because not any woman's gonna have someone say that to them and second guess themselves to think maybe that's the right thing to do because I don't want to lose you, or no. And there are some women that are gonna be like, you need to get out, you need to leave and get as far away from us as possible, because that's not even going to be a conversation for some women. They know exactly who they are able to see, who they can manipulate. And so, something to be aware of is that when you're in a position where that is something you're willing to consider, you are not a safe place for your children. You need to then get support and help to and deal with whatever's going on psychologically to be able
absolutely.
to be able to be the parent that your children deserve,
Yeah.
because that's what every child deserves. I wanted to ask you, Ruth, so they went into foster care
Mm.
after the incident when um, I'm just considering the timeline of the story that you've told. So there's the incident when this is alleged. There's an incident when she's 4 years old, when Jana's 4 years old,
Yeah.
allegedly. And then that becomes a big thing because the aunt, who sounds
Flies
to
are
me
back.
like an absolute
Yeah.
hero, flies her back specifically because she's going to deal
Mm.
with this, goes and lays a report. Is it as a result of that Heidi and Errol gets a divorce? Is it? Do you think it's because of that
It,
that the divorce then happens? And do
it's
they
not
then go to foster care after?
so
Yeah.
it's not stated and it's not clear as to why they got divorced. It was just mentioned by the family friend that they got divorced.
Right.
But
Got
keeping in
divorced.
mind that they later remarried as well.
Yes, I
So
know. I just wanna know, did the kids go into foster care after the divorce or before the divorce?
I'm just going to look back here to my notes. So, okay, so there was the incident when Jana was 4 years old. But then 2 years
Yes.
later, in 1996, there was apparently another incident. And this is when Jana wanted to throw herself off the roof. So at
Yes.
this stage, what happened was Errol and Heide were already divorced. So they got divorced before the second incident.
And then as a result of the second incident, the kids went to foster care. So, but there was an incident, which means even though they,
But this can also be seen when they came back from America, right? This family friend said that they all came back together. And even when Haida moved to Darling from Pretoria, Errol came along with her.
yeah.
So there
So
was
that's what I'm
definitely
saying.
connection there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it appears, it can one can then assume that the divorce was an act to appear as though there was a separation. I'm leaving him because of what he did, but she didn't really leave him. She
Hmm.
didn't actually
Hmm.
leave him. He still had
Hmm.
access to her and the kids, for there to be that second incident.
Hmm.
And as a result of the second incident, he creates exactly what he wants in the first place, which is for the kids to go to foster care.
Hmm.
So there's all these red flags. It's not even red, they are red flags initially because he mentions and he says, our lives would be better. And
Yeah.
then he actually does something to the child. And what I know personally is when we say someone's done something to us and we give them that event, that is often not the only event. That's the one we're talking about.
mm,
Because
mm,
if this was actually going on, this is not, today I'm deciding I'm going to attack the child.
mm.
These predators, it's an ongoing behavior. Just like when yeah,
Absolutely.
it's an ongoing behavior. It's not, it's one incident there, one incident. Those incidents are only what's been highlighted and what has been told. But that
Yeah.
they are very possibly ongoing behaviors that are unspoken that have taken place. So
But yeah,
at four
yeah, we
years
can
old,
see how, I just want to interject there, Ela. When you look at this whole situation, right, and suggestion of that foster care, that wasn't just cruel. In my opinion, it looks like, and again, let me use my aunt as an experience, right? It wasn't just cruel, but it looks like it's strategic. Um, there's a long, like you said, this is a process. There is a game of manipulation. It's designed to sever those family bonds, increase dependency, I'm the savior, and remove anyone, even the children, who might interfere with this level of control. So understanding this, it helps us recognize that grooming isn't always, it doesn't always start with attention or affection or anything like that. There's certain little things. I remember there was things like little small gifts given, and we all thought, ooh. Um, but then there was also things like boundary testing, small inappropriate comments. I remember that. There was obviously touching, um, little things to desensitize the victims, and a lot of gaslighting that went on. And these are just some of the things that, you know, perpetrators use. And there's so many more. There's like normalizing abuse. Um, and when I look at this situation, there was so much back and forth. There was no like cut off.
yeah.
Like, no, this is, yeah. Um,
There was no cut off. There was, yeah, not really. And I think that, yes, definitely, 100% of the blame is on the shoulders of the perpetrator. There's a grooming process that takes place, but there's another 100% of fault. And whether people want to call it victim blaming, everybody can have their own opinion. But if this
mm,
story is true, my opinion is that the person that is at fault here more than anything else is the mother. It was her job to protect her child. He was a strange man coming from outside.
mm, mm,
And I don't understand how, when the kids have gone into foster care because of these incidents, that they would return the kids whilst he's in the picture, and there is a possibility that the system just doesn't care enough, because it certainly looks that way. They listen to what the mother says, and they try and accommodate the family getting back, the mother and the children getting back together at all costs. But I can't speak and say that that's 100% the case. There's certainly a chance that that just wasn't looked into enough by
mm,
child protective service, child welfare, because I know from personal experience, child welfare, uh, they spread really thin. There aren't enough social workers, and so they don't do the due diligence. They've got so many cases, so it
mm,
could be that. But then there's certainly also possibility that that the facade was that they separated and they're living in separate homes so that the mother can get the children back, but was not honest. It doesn't seem like she was serious about protecting her children from this man.
mm,
And
mm,
the fact that she was, it's that one can consider those and have compassion for it, but it's still not an excuse. When we're
mm.
adults and we choose to have, you're taking care of your children is your responsibility. And putting yourself
Absolutely.
into a position where you can do that is your responsibility. And if you can't, you place them, you do everything you can to have them in a home where they are going to be safe. And you certainly don't take them back to be in the environment of the man that's done this. And so her mother failed her over and over. Yeah.
And I think
It's, it,
the point that you make there is so relevant. This is why almost at the end of these events, when I was referring to them, we could see that Jana apparently didn't want to have anything to do with her mother. So when she was in a bit of a pickle, and she had a baby, she was again using, she then reached out because that was the only person, according to Jana, that she could reach out to help for.
well,
So,
he positioned himself as a hero long ago. He
yes,
positioned
yes.
himself as a hero long ago. And her mother played right into his plan to destroy their bonds.
And that's really,
The mother
really
played right
unfortunate.
into that.
It's so
Yeah.
unfortunate for Jana because the one person that was there or who would have protected her mother, that relationship was almost no more. The family member or the family friend mentioned that, when she was living on the street in Stellenbosch, her mother was in a relationship with someone else. So again, the attention to her children, she was in a relationship with someone else, and that is why Jana reached out to Errol because he was kind of her last resort, like you said, that savior
That's how
mentality.
that's how he positioned himself as the hero. And so that's a very good
Yeah.
position for him. He knows how to do that well. We'd like to think that the one person who would have protected her was her mother, but we
Mm,
don't know that because she did not.
mm,
Past behavior has shown that she did not. So you can't. So Yana probably didn't expect it either to be a
mm,
priority to be centered. And another thing we need to consider and be very, very aware of is it's very difficult to support and help a struggling adult child with addiction. That is
mm,
why
mm,
you need to take care of them, and parent health in a healthy way, center recovery and well-being when they are children, because by the time they're adults, obviously she's spiraling because of everything that she's experienced. The people who are supposed to protect her, with the person who is supposed to protect her, that relationship's completely ruined because that person has facilitated the destruction of the bond and the relationship and her sense of trust and security, because that person who was supposed to protect her, who is her mother, okay. So, and anyone that knows what it means to deal with an adult child who is traumatized, who is an addict, it's very difficult. It's difficult for other people to help them too. It's really difficult for family members and friends who want to help them. And it's easy for the manipulator, the predator, to help because the predator doesn't care about their health. The predator will let them do what they want as long as the
yeah.
predator gets to control and manipulate and have access, and has that position of power, which is, I'm going to be able to keep you around and be your hero because I'm going to give you the money and the place to stay and whatever. I'm not interested in your health and well-being. I'm interested in being in control of you. And often those, in some situations or scenarios, those are the people who will accommodate or facilitate the addictive behavior and the codependent behavior because it serves them.
Absolutely.
So
I think one of
when
the,
young, yeah,
and then, when you speak about the special care that was required, um, and it is definitely, addiction for adults is very, very different. They need specialized care. Um, this opportunity, obviously, when I look at it now, in this situation, there was a transition from daughter to partner during this phase. And I just wanted to touch on that, because for me this is a alleged classic sign of long-term grooming finally being acted on. And
Yes.
I don't know how other people leave your comments, guys, how you feel about this. But if someone goes from raising a child to then that child becoming their partner, what are your thoughts, Ela?
I would say if he really cared about her and wanted to support her, why did he not put her into a rehab, into a facility? It seemed so opportunistic to be like, yeah, come and stay with me. I'm going to give you
Mm.
money. And he also set this up, because he was sending money before that, which was
Oh,
sort of positioning himself. I'm just reminding you that I'm willing to do this for you and I can do this for you. And if
mm,
she's now got this child, she's on the street. She needs to be a healthy mother. She needs to be healthy for herself. And if I really want to support that, it's like, let's get you into a safe house so you can get onto your feet. Let's get you into rehab. Let's get you help. And I will support you. But it seems
mm.
very opportunistic the way that it happened here. And
Absolutely. And when you
every
look at the state that Jana was in when she reached out apparently to Errol, she must have been in such a vulnerable place. You're on the street, you're a single mom, you're not able to provide, you using. That is a really vulnerable place to be in. And I think that, like you said, that is an opportunity. Um, Instead of protecting her, you know, things just really, really, yeah, didn't work out that well.
Yes. And when she went to live with him, after everything that had happened, there was no one in her life whose ears perked up and were like, this is not going to help her. This is the person that put her in this place.
Hmm. Hmm. And according to the
She was
family friend,
completely vulnerable to this man.
according to the family friend, they heard about the fact that they had a child together. So there was, I don't know if there was an opportunity for the family to get involved, but it happened shortly after. So if you go and watch the YouTube video, Errol, he said in a previous video on the Wide Awake podcast, he wasn't sure if the child was his, because she showed him a photo or something. And there again, for me, that is just manipulation. She came to live with you. You're the only one that had access or, a relationship with her. So it just shows that dynamic. And for me, it's just absolutely shocking that this could have happened.
Yeah.
It's very, very sad. Obviously, when I recapped on the life events of Jana, she was a 4-year-old girl and someone came into their lives. It was not by choice. Her mother remarried. She went into foster care. Then she went back to the United States. So you can see the amount of instability there is massive. Sorry, Ida?
But it's not even the instability. It's the fact that I think they went through to great lengths for him to have access to them. Is it possible that the reason why they went to live in the States was so that they could be away from the child welfare services here in South Africa and the family's eyes, and they could be together and live like a happy family after everything that he's done, knowing that he is a predator? He confessed to Heidi after the first incident. She still made it possible for him to have access to the kids. It sounds to me like they were never really separated or apart. There was no clear cut that you're not having access to my kids or to me ever again because of you clearly have a problem and I cannot trust you with my kids.
Hmm.
She was the person who had the keys to the door for whoever has access to her kids and who does not. And it looks to me like the reason why they decided after a family visit to the States that they're just going to stay is perhaps to start a new life and pretend that none of this has happened. So Jana is living in a house there in Malibu, um, living a life of luxury and glamour in the home where the man who's playing the role of a father is also the person who has violated her, is also her predator. Just imagine what that's like. And then they come back to South Africa all of a sudden, probably for the very same reason, because
But
this was
yes,
an ongoing
because
thing.
there was an incident that happened in the States as well, where
Yes.
there was a protection order issued by the Los Angeles Protection Services. So the cycle kept repeating, and we can see that Jana is at the center of all of this, which is really, really unfortunate for her. Um,
She,
so like what you
she
said
didn't
there,
stand a chance.
so
She, she did not stand a chance. She did not stand a chance. Um, she was failed by the people who were supposed to protect her. A predator
yes,
had access to her all the time. And the fact that they had money made it worse because they decided, well, we don't want to have to um, explain why I'm around the child after I had. There are two reported incidents, and it's known that I have attacked this child, assaulted this child, and had inappropriate behavior towards a child. So yeah, on a whim, let's just start a new life in America,
mm,
and then there's another incident. Clearly, he could not control himself. He could not help himself. And her home, which was supposed to be her safe place, and her mother, who was supposed to be her protector, and the family knew about this. And people might say, well, why didn't the family do something? Child welfare knew. Child, this, are the rules, the laws, and the processes with child welfare too lenient? Are they too lenient? Because perhaps, do you just go to a mother and ask, are you still with this man? No, we divorced. Okay, yeah, you can have your kids. Do you actually go and check up? They don't check up.
mm,
There's no
mm,
follow up. How do you know that people are actually taking care of the kids? Why do you wait until someone's trying to jump off a building, or until something so extreme has happened that
yeah,
now you've got to take action? That is not protecting. That is acting after the fact. That is not child welfare. That is not child protective services. And that system needs to change because it's too little too late very often. The mother and
absolutely.
mothers, are mothers
I
being
mean, the
held
mother,
accountable?
absolutely. As a mother, you are accountable for, even as a single mother, I can say I am accountable 100% for my children. If there is any indicator of abuse, even if that's emotional abuse, you have the right to absolutely sever the ties. I made a video a while back, about a year back, about stop bringing your children around people that are not good for them. They will let you
Yeah,
know. Intuitively, you know as a mom. My child's eyes don't light up when they're around this person. There must be something going on. Or, it's
yeah,
so important for us to bring our children around people who are good for them, who make their eyes light up, and who absolutely love them, who would protect them to the ends of the earth. That is our role as a mother. We are the gatekeepers. And especially when you're a single mom, like you said in the beginning, Edith, it's not always easy, but it's so worth it because our children, they look at what we do, they model our behavior. Like you said, they don't listen often to what we say. It goes in by the one ear, goes out the other ear, but they do model our behavior. So we have the opportunity to protect our children. And it's so important that we do step up as mothers. That is the first. I remember my grandmother was a single mother and she was so fierce. Eh? Anybody that said anything to her children that was inappropriate, there was zero tolerance. And that's what we need to get back to.
yeah. Some might not think that they have the opportunity to protect their kids. Whether you think you have the opportunity or not is irrelevant. You make a way to protect your kids in the best way you can. It's your responsibility. How are we going to? We keep asking, what's wrong with the world? Look, people, every time I look at cases on social media that are being broadcasted where men have done horrific things or women have done horrific things to children and so forth. What's going on in the world? Wow, this is crazy. It's so hard to believe. Do you know why our world is so violent? Why so many people are sick? Because we're expecting children to grow up in abusive, unhealthy. We're expecting children to grow up in horror stories and to be healthy adults. It's not
Mm.
possible. So you have a responsibility towards society to make sure that you are raising your children and protecting them from trauma that they are going to be towering under. And I don't think that that is taken seriously enough because there is a history of treating children like they're not humans until they become adult. Now you're a human,
Mm.
but you were
Mm.
that child once. So that's got to change in our society. The system here failed this child, but the system's hands are tied in the face of what the mother did. And so when these things happen, I as a mother feel that I want to be questioned. I want to know that you're checking me out too and sending me for therapy and saying you're going to get a psychological assessment and you're going to go through this and you're going to do this community service so that you can understand and see the impact of these things, so that you can understand when you make choices about who you bring around your children, how serious those choices are. That's the world I want to live in. Hold me accountable as a mother.
Yes,
It's not
absolutely.
happening. It's not happening.
And as parents, we can't afford to get that wrong. That process that you just mentioned there. It's our responsibility to protect, empower, and stay present with our children, especially when our children, well, they are vulnerable. And that means trusting our instincts, like I said. When something feels off, even if it's someone close, trust your instincts. Teach your children about boundaries, and this is something that I talk to my daughter often about. What does that mean? What does safe touch mean from an early age? Like I mentioned in a previous podcast, my daughter is not, if someone hugs her, she's like, no, you need to ask. What does consent mean to our young men out there? Are we having those conversations? And without shame or without judgment, have those conversations with your children. And the most important thing is believing your children. When they come to you with something, believe them. Children, when they believe your children, if they come to you, act swiftly, you know, um, because children don't often make up stories about abuse. And try and surround yourself with support. It's not always easy, and it depends on where you're living in the world, but we need to surround ourselves with the proper support. I know in certain countries there's support systems, like you have mentioned, there's a welfare in South Africa. But a support system could look like a good friend also, a trusted friend that you can speak to. And I'm talking about, there wasn't one mention of the mother speaking or confiding in someone. Um,
No, Ruth, I don't think so. The sister went out of her way for her child. I don't think so. I don't think she wanted help. And
yeah,
I don't care what anybody says. This is how I look at it, and I could be wrong. I think that what do we do? Our expectation is just that every mother is going to be good and her children are going to be her world and the center of all the decisions she makes. And it's not the
mm,
case. It's not the case. And I'm not saying that people are bad people. I think that human beings, we all want to be the best we can be. But we have good people with serious problems making bad decisions. Women who are addicts cannot center their children. Their addiction is centered. Men who are addicts cannot center their children. Their addiction is centered. Men who are predatory, there is a battle that goes on between doing the right thing and being a good person and having their needs met. and it depends on the quality of the person. We cannot trust that everybody's just going to do the right thing. What and when and as when a mother has so much power, um, should we have processes implemented that holds parents accountable when things happen to their children? I think it should be. I come from a community, I've personally experienced so much abuse and neglect that could have been prevented. And I'm not saying crucify people. People are struggling, but are we as single mothers getting the support? Should it be a part of our system that when you are a young mother that ends up being single, there's a program you go into which is therapy, facilitates education, awareness, self awareness, and programs that encourage support?
Yeah.
Or do we just, well, this is an adult and they get to say what happens in their children's lives and they just get to do whatever. The ball wasn't dropped here.
Mm.
People spoke for those children to end up in foster care. It was
Yeah.
known. This was
Yeah.
not a secret. It was not hidden. It was known. It was blatantly ignored.
Yeah.
Her
And
needs were blatantly ignored. And
absolutely.
to her to then become an adult, some people might think, well, how do you end up going and then making a baby with your predator? When you're 4 years old and that kind of interaction between this father figure and you is normalized within your family home, and they position themselves in a way where they are the healer, they get the hero, sorry, and everything is stacked up for you to fail. Obviously, she was going to end up, if you don't end up being an addict on the street, you're not normal. You're an exception to the rule. I am an
Yeah.
exception to the rule. I should be an addict I have been an addict on the street that couldn't cope with my life. So my heart is broken for this woman because what chance
Absolutely.
did she ever have?
And if, like I said in the beginning, according to this close family friend, there were so many people that knew about this. There were social workers, there were lawyers, there were friends of the family. So we can see how this story impacted many lives, but the life that was impacted the most was Jana. Um, I would love to hear from our audience in the comments. What do you think could
Yeah.
change? How could we address some of these issues that we spoke out today? Let us know, what do you think needs to change wherever you're dialing in from the world? What do you think needs to change in your countries to support not only single mothers, because this happens in other dynamics with single fathers? What can be done to change, to start the healing? And if you don't know yet, we have an amazing course on which is available on Patreon. I'm going to leave the details below, but let us know your thoughts in the comments, guys. It was an absolute pleasure having you here today. Any last words?
Yes, please share the information around our course in recovery that the Heal community facilitates on a bi weekly basis at Patreon. It is an affordable way for you to get the support, to get the awareness, spread the awareness, and to equip yourself to build your own culture for recovery, your own safe spaces, and heal where you've experienced, or a family member or friend or a loved one has experienced this type of violation and abuse. It affects the entire family and the community, and everybody deserves the healing. But as you see, it becomes a cycle. And so we've got to start to break it somewhere. And that is what we aim to do. That's our intention with the course in recovery. So share this podcast. We'd love to grow this community. We'd love to see you in the future when we have more such discussions. We regularly get together where we do case studies on the mind, the psychology, and the lives of the pedophile so that you can begin to be in the know. Who are these people? How do they think? Their fathers, their brothers, how do they hide? I think it's worth empowering ourselves. So stick around, subscribe, like, share, do all of the things, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in the future. In the meantime, stay safe, and take care.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.